Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa, and today we have a real treat for you. It's Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin joining us. So this is somebody that Bix has introduced me to, and I'm just really excited. This is somebody that I follow and listen to. I try to learn. My dad, Papa T, that we are going to be celebrating this weekend, introduced me to precious metals and coins, and he gave me this book, which I have somewhere in here in my library, about coins. Years ago, when he was trying to teach me about precious metals and why that's so important and how that's our constitutional money. And I was listening to Andy talk the other day about that and about some theories about how that might go down. And so I'm going to pick his brain about that and some other things. So you guys join us. Give us a like, share this video, and we'll be right back with Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin. Hi, Andy. Welcome to the new normal. Thanks for joining us here on the show.
Great to be here, Lisa. Thanks for having me. Long overdue. I've been a fan from afar, but I appreciate finally getting a chance to hook up.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I was saying earlier, we've been watching you for a long time. My dad, that we're going to be honoring this weekend, I really appreciate you coming into Oklahoma City to help me celebrate and honor Bix and Amy and all that the Road to Ruta has done for Team Mighty. And then also honoring my dad, who's a Korean War vet and atomic vet.
Nice.
Also, yeah, so we're going to be celebrating his life as well. And that, knowing that you're going to be here is just kind of a little cherry on the top, because it all brings everything together. My dad was a gold and silver bug back in the day, and they were trying to escape. They worked for themselves. They were oil and gas landmen, petroleum landmen, and we're always trying to escape the system, because as soon as you just make enough to feel like you're making it, and then between taxes and them trying to cover costs of expense and whatever, it just could never get ahead, and having 7 children didn't help,
I suppose not.
Yeah, but we were always just really struggling, and my dad really believed in precious metals and silver, and he was always putting that away. And when he and my mom red pilled my husband and I, that was one of the things. He would get out his coin book, and I think it's called like a coin Bible, or I was trying to,
the Red Book of Coins, probably.
It might have been. It's like this big book, and you look through it. And then my husband, his dad owned gas stations growing up, and he would sit there, and he can do the motion just right. He would go through all the change every night at the end of the night, go through all the change and pull out all the coins before 64 to pull the ones that had silver in them, And so we have a lot of those coins, what they call the junk silver. And I heard you talking about that the other day. I've got, if Bix has told you anything about me, he will tell you what a conspiracy theorist I am. And I told him, well, we'll go toe to toe one day. And for every conspiracy theory, you give me a not conspiracy theory, and we'll see who ends up talking last. And
well, there's a fine line these days between conspiracy and reality. Right. And it's a hard delineation, but I think there's a little bit of truth to, if not a lot of truth, to every conspiracy. I kind of float in that spectrum as well, and no, I'm all good with that. I like going down the rabbit hole from time to time.
Well, that's what I was hearing in some of your latest interviews, and right when it was getting juicy, it kind of cut off. And so I definitely, everybody's talking about the $50 million deal that you guys did. And that's really interesting. And of course, I pick out the pieces of like, it was really difficult to get the money out of the bank
Right.
until it sounds like somebody almost had to threaten the bank or hold them accountable. Let's say hold them accountable, not threaten. That was really interesting to me, and I think those are some of the things that more and more people are going to start seeing. And then I also was curious what you think, or what things you're starting to see, or you might see, because you're on that inside track of. I guess I should back up and tell everybody. I'm just so excited to talk to you, so I need to slow down a little bit and tell everybody what is Miles Franklin, what you do at Miles Franklin, and what you guys can do for people. What your history
Absolutely.
is a little bit.
Absolutely. And I'm honored to be here, and thank you for your kind words. You're very sweet. I appreciate it. What is Miles Franklin? My father and I started a company together 33 years ago on a wing and a prayer. Kind of the embodiment of the American dream, Lisa, where we started our office in our company in a one-room office size of a closet, with a loan from a friend and my parents selling their life insurance policies. That was 1989, and here we are 33 years later. We've eclipsed 7 billion in sales. We've never had a customer complaint ever. We're one of only 27 United States Mint authorized resellers. It's probably my biggest achievement in my career. A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. All of those things that you would like in a company, and achievements that mean so much to me. But state of Minnesota, where our corporate office is located, where I moved from after living there for 50 years, and after George Floyd, I moved here to Florida last year, about 13 months ago. We have had a satellite office here in Delray Beach for a decade, and I made that my new home. But I left my corporate office in Minneapolis because it's the only state in America that regulates what is a federally non-regulated industry. We are licensed, we are bonded, we are beholden to the Commissioner of Commerce in the state of Minnesota, with annual background checks and compliance, continuing education, and a bond every year that has made almost 100% of the country boycott Minnesota. Because Minnesota, whether you are selling into the state or sell from the state, is the only state in America that requires licensing, background checks every year, and bonding. And in what is an industry that doesn't require any of this unless you're dealing with Minnesota. So most states in the country have boycotted Minnesota. It holds us to a much higher standard for sure. This website that you're looking at right now is something that I look at with disdain. It's really not a good website. We're building a new one, and it'll be operational here in August, in the next week or two or three.
Well, we'll update everyone later then.
Yeah, our website does not allow currently for online purchasing, but I will tell you that in terms of price and availability, our price will be as good as anyone in North America, from the safest company in the industry, one that is accredited by the U.S. Mint and state of Minnesota. So I'm very proud of where we come from, and very proud of our accomplishments. And the state of Minnesota puts an exclamation point on that. As far as your question on the $50 million deal, yeah, it's real. I'll just talk about it briefly. Bill Holter is one of my outside reps. Bill's a good friend of mine. He is Jim Sinclair's partner, Mr. Gold, as he was called in the 70s. And Bill runs all his business through me. Bill called me about a month ago on a Friday and said, I think we're going to get a $50 million deal. Now, in $7 billion in sales, the biggest deal I have ever done at one time was $9 million. And I've done lots of seven-figure deals, but nothing in excess of $9 million in one transaction. And you hear these things in the industry, and you're like, yeah, right, okay, great. I trust Billy. I mean, he's a great friend, and I believe him as he's as sincere as the day is long. So I believed he believed it, but I didn't believe it. I thought there's no way that this happens, because I've heard it a million times before. Okay, Bill, sounds good. Well, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Monday comes, I call him around 5 o'clock, said never got a wire today. He said, yeah, she went into the bank, was told that she has to go to the main branch. That's in another state 3 hours away. So she's going to go tomorrow, stay at her sister's house and get this done. I said, great. Tuesday comes along next day, and she goes and spends hours in the lobby or in a back room at the bank. They're putting the hard press on her, trying to talk her into not doing this transaction, asking her all sorts of questions, and would not send the wire because the branch manager wasn't there. So now she's getting infuriated and is threatening to call the regulators if this is not done by tomorrow morning. Wednesday morning rolls along, and the branch manager will be in that day. We receive a phone call from the bank. The bank asks us one question that is logical and one that was kind of shocking. The logical question is, what is your wire instructions? This is what we have, just want to verbally verify it. Mm-hmm. Now I'm interested. I'm like, wow, this might actually happen. They then ask us, is your company able to fill an order of this size? And I really wanted to say, well, that's really none of your business.
Yeah.
I wasn't the one who took this call, fortunately. This was my operations. And they said, yes, of course. One thing led to another, and we received the wire. The client wanted us to tell the world that not only is sophisticated big money aware of what's happening to the dollar and to the markets and the benefits of owning metals, but more importantly, just how difficult retrieving her money was out of the bank, that retrieving it is nowhere near as easy and simple as depositing it, and that there are hurdles that you have to overcome, in her case, almost 4 days. And it was something that I think was a wake-up call to her and should be to all of us, in that, these banks are making it very difficult for people to get their money out in a timely fashion. And this is when things are still relatively calm here. And I think, imagine if you see multiple big investors start pulling money out of banks, that's tantamount to a bank run. What happens? Do they start to limit the ability in which you can get money out? I went to Truist Bank down here about a week ago, and I really don't like the bank. I've used U.S. Bank back in Minnesota forever, and they were much better. But this Truist Bank, they've done some things, including asking me what I was going to do with $4,000 in cash. The other day, I asked for $4,000 in $20 bills. I had 2 checks. I said, I'll take 20s. And she said, well, it'll be a big stack. I said, that's okay. And then she said, well, what are you going to do with it? Man, it took a lot for me to not tell her to pound sand, but I didn't, and I got the money. Then a few days later, I went there, and I'm in line to make a deposit. I hear an elderly lady ask for $15,000. This was last Friday, before I went to the Sprott show, or during the Sprott conference, or Rick Rule's conference here in Boca. And they said to the lady, we've had a lot of people request cash the last few days, so we can give you 7,000 or 8,000. I'm thinking to myself, these are the institutions we trust with our money, that you feel like a criminal asking for it, or you can't even get it, whether it be 4,000 in cash, 15,000 in cash, or 50 million in a wire.
Right.
The threat is the same.
We've had this same experience, several times over the years, but then even recently, because cryptos we knew were going to dump, and they were offering me more than we paid for my dream supercar that we bought when cryptos did go up, and so we sold it, and then we went to go take the money out because we're like, okay, well, we believe in holding our own assets. We listen to Bix. Bix is the godfather of our family. That's how we got red pilled, through my mom and my dad watching Bix and listening to Uncle Cliff and you guys, and following all this. This is like our family legacy. So that's how we live, and we were treated like criminals and negotiate. And you should have seen them all. We're sitting there in the lobby, like I felt like this, like the bad kid, and they're all standing over in a corner the branch manager, all these people, and they're like talking about us and whispering, and they're like trying to figure out, well, how much should we let them have? Well, you can have this much today, and then if you come back next Wednesday, you can have this much. And I had so much anxiety about it. And I told my husband, I was like, and then he's like, well, we'll come at noon. He's so nice. We'll come at noon so you guys have time to get it together. And I was like, you go there right when they open, and you be there right when they open, and you get that money out. And he said the Brinks truck was there. And so he waited and just made them wait. And then they're completely out of bank bags, which means they have no intention of giving people money. They're not reordering bags to give you your money out. This is what my conspiracy mind is thinking, And he said, I said, what did you see them carrying out of the bank? He said they were bringing in bills and taking out coin.
Yeah, you can look at the banks in being reluctant to release money. You can look at the United States Mint, who has been the model of inefficiency. As one of 27 authorized resellers, the U.S. Mint is near and dear to me. But as it pertains, as an example of Silver Eagles, they have done a horrible job in getting supply to the industry with premiums north of $12 or $13 an ounce on Silver Eagles right now. It's ridiculous. They're
Why
$8 or $9.
Wouldn't they be motivated to do that at that premium?
I'll tell you something else that they said to me the other day that just makes me believe they're really trying to mitigate the exodus maybe out of the dollar, and making it very difficult for people to accumulate metal. You mentioned that there's a fine line, or that you like to go down the conspiratorial rabbit hole. And I said, I believe there's a fine line between conspiracy and reality. Well, in this case, for 2 years now, the Silver Eagle has been priced anywhere from $5 to $10 higher than every other coin of the 6 major mints: the Britannia, the Philharmonic, the Kangaroo, the Krugerrand, and the Maple Leaf. The Eagle has always been 50 to 75 cents more my whole career, and now it's $5 to $7 to $10 more. Weird. Over the past 2 years, last year we did almost $600 million in sales. 97% of it was in silver. Everyone's buying silver. Not many people have been buying gold by and large as a percentage of our total sales. And I would submit that that's pretty much consistent throughout the whole industry. And the U.S. Mint called me a month ago and said, hey, by the way, we are curtailing production of all gold by 50% into the second half of the year. And I immediately went online and premiums are going to start to skyrocket. At the time, probably $90 over the price of gold to buy a gold Eagle. Would have bought them back for 50, 55, 60, something like that. But now they're 160 or higher everywhere in the country. They've gone up $80 or $90 an ounce in the past month. It's following the same pattern that the Silver Eagle did through complete and total inefficiency. It's the one part of the government that is profitable. It's the one thing that people should be looking as a hedge to what's happening globally, and yet our own mint is really making it very difficult for people to, in fact, claim that it's a lot of times people claim that they're not getting the blanks or the planchets, and most of the silver comes from Sunshine Mining refinery, yet they produce the blanks for many of the other sovereign mints. I think they do it for the Earth Mint, they do for the Rand Mint or the UK Mint. Many of these mints, they make the blanks, and these mints have had no problem getting me product, and their coins are all sold between, $4 and $4.50 over the price of silver. Eagles are 13 right now. Something's amiss with the U.S. Mint, to say the least. And I think that, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's the same thing. It's just becoming very difficult to protect yourself in this environment. U.S. Mint isn't making it any easier, nor are the banks. And I would argue, when you leave your money in a banking system that pays next to nothing in the way of return, that has removed all of their reserve requirements, that have bail-ins built into the structure now, and money market gating. Most people, I think, aren't even aware of the money market gating, and they think they're safe in money markets, but they're not. they will be gated and won't be able to get out when things get really difficult. That was a law that was put in 2009 right next to the bail-ins. But the return we're getting is not commensurate with the risk.
I haven't heard of money
Yeah,
market gating. I've heard of bail-ins, and we talk about bail-ins a lot on this show and a lot of others. I haven't heard of the gating. Can you explain that for us?
Sure. So when Lehman Brothers went bust, many of the money markets were invested with Lehman Brothers. And it's called breaking the buck, where everyone tries to pull out really fast out of the money markets and the underlying investments aren't doing well. You don't even get back your initial principal. And there was such an attempted exodus out of the money markets that they stopped it. They stopped redemptions, and they put in to law money market gating, which means the next time this happens, they can freeze redemptions out of the money market. You are locked in to the money market. You are gated. And those are legislations that were put in right at the exact same time that the bail-in legislations were put in, where they effectively made bailouts illegal, where the taxpayer would not bail out the bank, but that the depositors in and of themselves would make the bank whole in a pro rata fashion. These are types of implementations one would have to assume were put in for a reason. I mean, why would they put these in if not for a future eventuality where they would have to be implemented?
Bail out Wall Street.
This is why I think you get guys like Bix, and I love Bix, and that's why I'm sponsoring his show in be Texas with you all in a couple of days. So he says, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. The removal of counterparty risk is something that I think is very important right now, and will become more prevalent as things start to unfold. And just the banking system alone, which we believe is safe and sound. When you look at the experience that the old lady next to me had, even me trying to get $4,000 out, or my client who wanted to spend an imaginable amount of money, the difficulty in retrieving that money is something that I think is shocking. If you are a depositor of that magnitude, where maybe you're the largest depositor in the bank, you would, I think, expect to be treated really well, not to have to threaten after 72 hours of not having access to your money, threaten with the regulators. Now imagine if gold and silver had been flying and moving up $7 a day, and I can show you a situation where I think that can happen, what that would have meant to her when you're talking upwards ends of 1 million ounces of silver. And, that's a big deal. So anyways, these are the things that we are confronted with right now. And these are the reasons why I think when you talk about cryptocurrencies or precious metals, having them in your own possession, removing the counterparty risk. One of the reasons I really like gold and silver in that environment is that they're assets that are not simultaneously someone else's liability. They have no counterparty risk. They are immutable wealth world over without a counterparty's requirement to make good, like on a derivative or like on just about any type of financial asset. There's a counterparty involved where the value of that asset is based upon the counterparty's ability to pay or to perform. Not the case with precious metals.
Definitely. So I have some more conspiracy theory, but also based in fact, things to throw at you, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on them.
Sure.
Sometime last year, I'm in Oklahoma. You're coming to Oklahoma City this weekend. I'm super excited. And we have a constitutional governor, and we've been really protected by that and a lot of things that have gone on here. Our state moved to make our treasury backed by gold, or passed a law that our treasury would be backed by gold. And it was my understanding that protects us from a lot of things, one of them being that we're protected from the Fed and taxes and those kind of things. Do you think that could be playing into what you were seeing with the mint saying, oh, we're slowing down on this gold production? Could the mint be moving that gold or those gold eagles into backing state treasuries?
I don't think that that would be the case. I think that if we, our media Lisa does a really poor job of telling us things that are important. And I have been on a crusade for the last few years screaming about what I'm about to tell you, but most people don't really even know it unless you've been following some of the people whose shows I'm on, like Bix or Yak and Ninja, or some of these other shows that I do, Dunnigan. But in April of 2019, the Bank of International Settlements, which is central bank, it's the most well-funded, well-informed, influential set of bankers on the planet, reclassified gold as the world's only other tier 1 reserve asset. Think about that for a second. Since 1944, the only tier 1 reserve asset has been US dollars and US treasuries, but out of nowhere, they labeled gold as the only other tier 1. And so this is, to me, one of the reasons why you're seeing so many of the European banks, the China, India, the Arab banks, they're all accumulating gold, all of them. And a lot of the Eastern European countries, Hungary, Poland, Turkey, Czech Republic, these are countries that are in the European Union but do not trade the euro. They are the biggest accumulators of gold over the last several years. They are the ones that also repatriated their gold from the New York Fed, and the Bank of England made a big deal about it after the German Bundesbank did it. I think gold will be front and center to some form of a new standard. Even take it a step further in terms of conspiratorial, the Ukraine just announced $12 billion in gold was sold to fund the war efforts. Where did that go? Who took it? Is the U.S. accumulating gold because they've sold so much of it to hold the price down? Fort Knox hasn't been audited since 1956. Where is the gold going? It is a tier 1 reserve asset. But I would simply say that if you realize the U.S. Mint is a federal entity, I would think that they would backstop the U.S. Treasury with gold in preparation for what's coming, because I think there's some scary things on the horizon before they would acquiesce to the individual state needs. With that being said, I would like to hope that the states are indeed accumulating this gold. Those like Utah, maybe Oklahoma City, those that want to have some sort of a tether to a system that is in dire need of some sort of constraint. Because ultimately, I think it's the only way to ever legitimize currency, to ever allow people to want to store their money in a currency instrument that is not the way the U.S. dollar has been or is being destroyed by the printing press. And so I don't think that that's where they're going with gold. But if you told me that it was being siphoned off to the Treasury, relinquishing or mitigating the amount that they sell to the public, I would believe that. I think that is logical. But I don't think it's going to the individual states just yet. I don't think they're in line to above the federal government.
Okay, it would more be like where it would be used for countries to be used in settlement first. You would see that being used in that use case first, not
so because they reclassified it tier 1, I think that's exactly what it will be. I think, honestly, I do believe that we are on the cusp of a new settlement system when you're seeing all of the BRICS nations coalesce into a new system where you're seeing Saudi Arabia say that we want to join BRICS. I'll come back to that in a moment. When you see China and Russia just announce a new BRICS world reserve currency. When you see India, our largest trading partner, we're their largest trading partner, saying that all trades now, domestic and international, will be in rupee. When you see Turkey say that they're contemplating joining the BRICS nations and they want all of their settlement in oil and Russian energy to be in their own currency or in ruble, not in dollars. When you see the Belt Road Initiative, which is connecting Asia and Africa, the largest infrastructure project ever attempted in human history. China has been doing for years. It's connecting 75% of global population, and all of it settling on the new digital yuan, which has 2 years worth of successful transactions. All of these things point to the same de-dollarization. And I ask people every day, what makes the dollar the world reserve currency? And no one seems to ever know any longer. It used to be pegged by gold prior to 1971. Other countries could exchange their dollars for gold since the end of World War II until 1971, when the president of France started draining all the gold held at the Treasury, demanding gold for the dollars he was holding, and he had every right to do that. Nixon closed the gold window, and after that, the dollar was backed by nothing, except for 3 years later when Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia and said, we'll protect you, and for that protection, you will globally denominate oil through OPEC in dollars. And for the last 50 years, the synthetic demand for the dollar has been a byproduct of the protection of the Saudi kingdom. Every country on the planet has to own dollars to buy oil. We protect Saudi Arabia. OPEC sells it in dollars. Everyone is happy until the day we left Afghanistan. And we did so leaving American citizens behind enemy lines, having allies behind enemy lines who trusted us, and people hanging from the wing of a transport plane. There is no coincidence that the day after this, Russia announces a joint military cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia. Biggest event of all of our lives, and no one talks about it. The media has done a horrible job of telling us that what allows us the dollar hegemony, the protection of the Saudi kingdom, is now being challenged, as Russia is now protecting Saudi Arabia. The day after that, they announced the same arrangement with Nigeria. Subsequently, Nigeria is already selling their oil to China for a yuan-denominated bond called the Petro-Yuan bond. That bond is immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, tier 1 asset. You wonder how Iran escapes U.S. sanctions. By the way, they just joined the BRICS nations. How do they escape sanctions? They sell their oil to China for a yuan-denominated bond, immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. You're seeing countries like Venezuela and all of these countries who don't like the U.S., who are resource rich, are all coalescing against the dollar. And all of these agreements, even our allies like India and Turkey, moving away from settlement in the dollar. This is where things get very, very concerning to me, where asset prices have been blown sky high against the lowest interest rates in human history, where more money was created in the last 3 years than in the history of this country. And all of that money in low interest rates has found its way into cryptocurrencies, stock portfolios, real estate portfolios, bond portfolios, pushing interest rates down to zero. And when you take a step back and realize that the Federal Reserve is trying to make us all believe they're going to get tough on inflation, but have no intention of doing so, only raising the federal funds rate to 2.25%, and look at the chaos in the real estate market. Just from that, you have 30-year mortgages at over 7%. Right. In 1 year, they've over doubled. What happens if they really raise rates? You have inflation at 9.1% and the federal funds rate at 2.25%. You're negative 6.75% real return. Who the hell would ever buy a 10-year treasury, maybe paying 3%, earning negative 6% real? And so we are seeing a move away from treasury settlement. China just sold $100 billion worth of our bonds over the last 6 months. They don't want to buy it anymore. They have their eyes set on Taiwan. Look at Nancy Pelosi in Taiwan. It's just disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
That we're provoking them. Why would they buy our bonds ever again? They wouldn't. So I guess to me, Lisa, the real frightening part of all of this is what happens when Saudi Arabia says, well, we've joined the BRICS nations, as they're just publicly announced they are contemplating. And I would argue you don't publicly announce a contemplation unless it's done. Mm-hmm. You soft announce it like that. Mm-hmm. And they say, hey, it's been a good run. Thank you so much for the memories. What happens when they say we're now opening up oil sales to Russia and the ruble, to the yuan, to gold, to the rupee, to the euro, and then currency? What happens when that happens?
They're leaving us with our dirty clothes. I mean, that's what it seems like.
Well, that's right. But all of those dollars, that's right. Every country on the planet has their own dollars. They come home. So a Fed doesn't want to be in history books for blowing everything up. That's for sure. And they're showing that by their inaction. So instead you find a villain, and that's by weaponizing the dollar and kicking out of SWIFT, you incentivized all countries to coalesce. And if you look one after the other, after the other, after the other, news stories pointing to the BRICS nations all coalescing, that represents almost 85% of human population. The Belt Road Initiative alone, which is just China and Africa, little bits of Europe, represent 75% of human population. So you are incentivizing the world to move away from the dollar. And if Saudi Arabia made that announcement, now being protected by 3 nuclear power countries, India, China, and Russia, specifically by Russia and China in agreements, and all those dollars come home. If you think inflation is bad now, what happens when they all come home? A byproduct of hyperinflation or of massive inflation or any inflation is rising rates. Rates have to rise to compensate for the inflationary effect on the currency. As rates rise, stocks, bonds, and real estate are inversely correlated to that rise in rates. And so when Klaus Schwab says there's a great reset on the horizon, and I thought he was an idiot for saying it, maybe not, because all it would really take is for the rest of the world to now be able to purchase oil in something other than dollars, and a good portion of those dollars that have been floating around the rest of the world come home, creating massive inflation and a spike in interest rates, stocks, bonds, and real estate all inversely correlated to that event. So the dollar collapses, and so do stocks, bonds, and real estate simultaneously. Now, you know, I think really hard on how to poke a hole in this, but everything that I am seeing is of a united effort by a good majority of the world to move away from settlement in dollars. If you save completely and totally in dollars, you're destined to go broke. If you are not a contrarian, you will be a victim. And I think for the very first time in all of our lives, this is becoming a reality. The other crashes, the other problems, the 08 was a credit problem. And this is not a credit problem. This is a de-dollarization problem. And this is a problem where if the Fed were to actually stand up to inflation, they blow up the entire system. In their minds, it's either death by depression or death by hyperinflation. I think the rest of the world is wise to what we're doing. And the only question that I have is, was weaponizing the dollar and kicking Russia out of the SWIFT system intended or unintended? Did they know? They had to have known.
They had to know. They had to know. And they're closing the exit ramps. Like you're talking about, you know, we talked about the bail-in. So that's an exit ramp that's closed for people. The gating is an exit ramp that's closed for
getting
people.
money out of the banks.
Getting money out of the banks. For then you also spoke about, what was the other one? I had
the U.S. Mint not making it easy to get metal.
Yes, not making it easy. Then there was a question for me about, you talked about, and it was right at the end of that. I think it was maybe even an interview that was maybe reposted or cut. It was like, then you could see, and I don't know if you were talking about the military or the government seizing all metals except U.S. or originated metal at some point. And what would that look like, and why is that the case? And is that something that you see as a reality? How does that play out? Am I jumping ahead? I don't know.
No, that's okay. That's so a lot of people asked me, why would this $50 million order specifically want American Eagles, which have massive premium? And they do. Why would they want pre-65 junk silver, which has massive premiums? And it does. And why would the client only want American gold coins, which have the largest premiums? And in particular, in her case, pre-33, what she wanted, but these are all coins and items that have high premiums. So there's not a problem for me to tell you this, because Bill Holter, who is my dear friend, has publicly said this repetitively. Bill Holter has a partner, Jim Sinclair, who was Mr. Gold in the 70s. Jim's father, his name was Murray Seligman. Murray Seligman was a very famous Wall Street trader. You can Google him, he'll pop up. Murray was involved in unwinding the Hunt brothers position. So Murray was very connected. And Jim has publicly told the world that his family is related to some of the lineage of Goldman and Goldman Sachs, and was told that there will be 2 resets. Now, again, I'm not saying that I endorse or agree with this. I'm just simply saying this is what he believes vehemently. And Jim Sinclair has told me this, that there'll be 2 resets. One will be man-made. You could argue we're on our way to that right now, and it won't work. And the second one will be by Mother Nature. And when Mother Nature takes hold, the U.S. government will confiscate all gold and silver items that are not American-made. Now, I don't know that I believe that. I have plenty of gold and silver that are not American-made. I haven't been convinced enough myself to do it, but I value his take on it. I believe he is sincere about it. Bill was the broker on this transaction, and I think discussed this with the client who thought it was a good idea. I can't say it's wrong. You know, behind me there, you see that the pictures of President Roosevelt and the executive order that he used to confiscate gold in 1933, right back there. Mm-hmm. That's the executive order. That's Roosevelt, and there's a $20 gold coin and a $20 gold certificate that was interchangeable with gold at the bank. But when gold was confiscated in 33, everybody owned it. It was currency. It was legal tender. Now, a tiny portion of people in this country own any gold. I don't think it would really, the unintended consequences would be dramatic. I quite frankly think that they'll take the ETFs long before they confiscate gold. But that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is that this is what Jim and Bill believe, and that's why they chose American-made products over anything else, because it would have been much easier for me to fill this order and much less expensive had I chose other items, for sure.
Okay, I have at least 2 more questions. I know I don't want to keep you all night, but so recently they retooled, they shut everything down during the Great Infection at the mints, and they retooled the mints. Why would they do that and put this little flat part on the coin that they say is a safety measure? But BIC says it's actually like the reverse thing. If you were to put a safety measure on a coin, the last thing you would do is do something that somebody could do that themselves. They could file off a flat part.
I do think that their anti-counterfeiting measure was not only cloaked in misinformation, disinformation, lack of information, but it's also kind of half-ass, really. If you look at like the Royal Canadian Mint, they have a micro-engraved maple leaf, a tiny little thing that would be impossible to counterfeit. I do think that they are moving the notch from year to year. I don't know that to be for certain, but I do believe they are. We've x-rayed the coins. We've examined them as much as humanly possible. I think the counterfeiting measure is really a poor design.
Maybe,
yeah, I don't know. That's their claim. Evidently, it's not easy to do this in manufacturing Silver Eagles. So I don't know. I don't think this one is as conspiratorial as people believe. There was a rumor there was a microchip embedded in it. That's not true. We've x-rayed them. We have machinery that can tell what's inside the coin. And but I will tell you that there's a large segment that prefers Type 1 silver and gold eagles over Type 2. But I guess, to me, that one's kind of a non-issue, honestly.
Interesting. And then we noticed that the new quarters that they're so light you can throw them across the room. They don't have George Washington on them. It's actually an Indian head, if you look closely at them. Any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I do have, I don't know if you can see it.
22.
Right, that one right there That is the Unapapa certificate. It's the only certificate that's ever had, the only paper note that's ever had an Indian head on it. No, I don't know. Simply to say that I think,
Because our new
you know,
the new treasurer is an Indian. She's Native American.
I did not know that. I
She
didn't know
is.
that.
Yeah.
Look, I think that, putting designs on coins and whatnot are, to me, I don't focus on things like that, and I don't find much in the way of conspiratorial fodder with the coins that they're making, the quarters or whatnot. But I do believe that they are trying to make it difficult for people to get gold and silver, especially from the U.S. Mint. It's been ridiculously hard and ridiculously expensive, and maybe all of it fits into it, a changing of the system. I do believe that we will at some point go to a central bank digital currency after things blow up. I do believe that we will go to a cashless society. I've been saying that since March of 2020 when Nancy Pelosi in her House Subcommittee Finance bill said that viruses can live on paper currency.
Yeah.
I think ultimately that's what they are gunning for. It has less to do with the erosion of privacy and more to do with monetary policy, so that the Federal Reserve can enact monetary policy directly to the public rather than having to go through the channels of the commercial banks who have to lend it into existence. But I think those days are coming. And when I ask, do people think it's intended, the outcome or unintended, this is why I believe it is intended. It's just like blaming Putin for inflation. Inflation is always an increase in the money supply and a decrease in productivity. You think about what the last 3 years have been. They've paid everyone to stay home, produce less stuff, pay them to do so they have more money, but less stuff is being produced. More money was created over this entire 3 years than in the history of the country preceding it. Less stuff being produced, more money being given to the public and thrown out into the system. It's the Fed's fault we have inflation. It's not Putin. Any more than when this all blows up, it will be the blame will be cast on the characters of the BRICS nations and of Saudi Arabia and of Putin and of Xi, and not on the Federal Reserve who got us into this awful mess to begin with. And so I wonder, when they did weaponize the dollar, when they did kick Russia out, when they did sanction them and freeze their assets and take their yachts and whatnot and close their bank accounts and keep the money, was the outcome intended? And I'm beginning to really think that it is. And when you put all of these pieces together and see the reluctance of the banks to release money, the reluctance of the mint to keep up with production, it starts to make you think a little bit more. Yeah, maybe that is what is happening. But any way you look at it, I think the world is coalescing against the dollar. The world is looking to de-dollarize. The world is looking to break the dollar hegemony. And when you realize that all of these nations literally comprise almost 90% of the world's population, for us to think that this will just be just like any other crisis that blows over with a smooth landing, I think it's a big mistake. Yeah. We have lived above our means largely by the good graces of our foreign creditors and the dollar hegemony provided by protection of the Saudi kingdom, all of which seem to be breaking. When you see China shed $100 billion in bonds in the last 6 months, who's going to fund our $1 trillion+ deficits every year? If our
they're starting to forgive the student loan debt as well. That all kicks in October.
Well, and I wonder just how much they'll follow through with that. Do you know that according to the 2022 balance sheet, or 2021 for sure, the largest asset that the country owns, they call it an asset, is student debt. Yes. It's more than the military. It's more than real estate. It is the largest asset on the U.S. balance sheet, the enslavement of our children. And so I wonder just how much they will relinquish student debt, or if it's just lip service, or maybe they just want to blow up the entire system and literally go to a great reset. Yeah. And that's why I think when you talk about just how fragile it really is, the dollar hegemony rests on the protection of the Saudi kingdom, and that is now being challenged. And if they say we're done, we won't go another direction, thank you, it's over. I think it's over in a matter of hours as those dollars come flooding home, popping interest rates to the moon and resetting everything. That is the part I wonder, was it intended and thought through? The villain is right there, or not. And, maybe these people are as diabolical as it gets. They have positioned themselves in a manner that when that happens, they'll be enriched for generations. But I think it's going to be very difficult here on the ground, and a lot of people are going to be caught off guard. A lot of people who think they're wealthy will be dropped to a common denominator, where rising rates will compete with overvalued asset prices, trying to find an equilibrium. The first house I bought in 1994, interest rates were 8 7/8. What would 8 7/8 interest rates do to the real estate market right now? We're not too far away from it, I guess.
Yeah.
At 7,
I
we were
was
at
going to
3
say
a
at
year
7.
ago.
Yeah. When I bought
So,
this house,
when you,
I think we were close to 3. Yeah.
right, and so at 3, more people can afford it, and it's more manageable. You can take on greater debt. At 8 or 9 or 10, it's over, and that's, I think, the road that we are heading down. And look, with inflation at 9% right now, which is understated dramatically. There was a study just done by the National Economic Bureau that came out and said that the 13.6% inflation in 1980, if calculated by today's metrics, would be 9.1%. That's what we're at. So really, inflation is 13.6% if measured the way they used to before they took out food, energy, and housing in 1980, because no one has to live or heat their house or eat. And so, anyways, Paul Volcker raised the federal funds rate then to 19.75%, above the then 13 or 14% inflation, to stop it in its tracks. What would happen to this economy if rates went that high? The Fed knows they can't do that. They blow everything up. They're the villain. Now they've incentivized the rest of the world to do the dirty work for them. Either way, the tab has to be paid. How do you pay off a $30 trillion debt and $100+ trillion in unfunded liabilities of Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and government and military pensions, where, at every 1% increase in rates is $300 billion just on the on-balance sheet debt, $300 billion increase in interest. So at 9% rates, you're talking $3 trillion in interest payments, not even touching the principal. So we have made it so far down the rabbit hole. We're so far, kind of like Bernie Madoff didn't start off to screw everyone, but by cheating and manipulating for so long, there's no way out.
There's no way.
And I think that's the same thing where we are. We realize, I believe, that this Keynesian system, which is based on debt and consumption and taxing, is nearing its end. Very little in the way of savings, massive amounts of debt, all of which are inversely correlated to a rise in rates. And I think at some point they realize that the tab has to be paid, and this is why they are incentivizing the rest of the world to do the dirty work for us. And there's going to be some pain, I think, that we have to go through. And I think this is why you own cryptocurrencies. This is why you own precious metals, to eviscerate yourself from the system, to get out of the way of the carnage that will happen when rates rise. And they will at some point. And when they do, if you are in traditional assets, you will be a victim like everyone else. So, people ask me, where do you put your money? I know you're Litecoin, Lisa. I know BIX is big in cryptocurrencies. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about them. I bought Theta because BIX is my friend. I'm not a crypto person. I don't understand them. I recognize the utility that they offer, but in my perspective, and that's only because I'm not an expert in cryptos, when I look at where to put my money, I find nowhere besides precious metals and maybe farmland. And maybe that's why Bill Gates is eating up all the farmland. Mm-hmm. Because when this all breaks, everything that is considered a pillar of wealth, a foundational pillar of wealth, generational pillar of wealth, will come into question in a rising rate environment, because all of these
asset prices have been skewed by the manipulation of interest rates and the misallocation of capital and resources that has created massive distortions in all asset prices that will come down when rates rise. So this is the foundation of everything that I think about and everything that I talk about, Lisa, where you're not worried about return on your money any longer. As far as I'm concerned, it's about return of it, and it's about getting out of harm's way. So when I talk about owning gold, it's wealth, and silver, it's wealth. It's not to get wealthy, but it has outlived 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, every pandemic, and the Great Depression. This is why I think people need to at least acknowledge a portion of their assets should be in physical precious metals in their own possession, removing any and all counterparty risk.
We definitely agree with that, and we're big followers of Uncle Cliff and Bix and what you tell us, and that's why I really am grateful for you coming on here. I have a couple questions from people.
Sure.
With that big purchase, people are asking, do you have any junk silver left, and where are you on supply, and do you still have silver and metals and gold after that big purchase? What does that look like? Can come to you for junk silver and also other metals?
I have a lot of silver. I mean, I guess a lot is relative, but very little in the way of junk silver. We do have some. It's becoming as rare as hen's teeth. It's impossible to find it in the respect that it hasn't been made since '65. And no one really wants to sell it to go back into dollars. And so pulling it out of the system is very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay enormous premiums to incentivize people to do it. I do have some. I do have some silver eagles, but we have plenty in the way of other sovereign mint coins, Maple Leafs, Britannias, Kangaroos, Philharmonics, lots of kilo bars, 10-ounce bars, 100-ounce bars, 1-ounce rounds, things that you can use. Look, it used to be called junk silver because most of my career I'd buy it under the melt value and sell it for 15, 20, 30 cents over melt value. Now you're going to pay almost $8 or over $8 an ounce over the price of silver to buy pre-65 dimes and quarters. That's something I never would have thought I would have ever said. So it's getting to the point, much like silver eagles, where you got to think about, is it really worth it? I have half-ounce Canadian mint polar bears that are made by the Royal Canadian Mint. They're 4.9 fine pure silver, and they're tiny little coins. To me, it's almost a better buy. It is a better buy. It's less money. You never say something like that. For me to be able to say you'll buy junk silver at $8, but a Philharmonic at 4.25 over is unheard of, where you buy a government-issued premium coin for half the premium of junk silver. Things are really distorted. So I don't know that I recommend it.
Yeah, that's where, so that's kind of one of the next questions that they were asking about, transferring to a silver IRA. Should I request certain kinds of coins for the IRA? But I guess that's kind of what you were trying to explain was, well, right now we're in this bizarre world with the premiums.
In an IRA, you can't own junk silver anyway. You can only own 3.9 fine silver or better. And I do think, precious metals IRAs are something we can help you with. My special this week for Jim, by the way, are Philharmonics and Britannias at $4.25 over if you buy a mint box, $4.50 if not. Should be as good or better than anywhere in the United States. Anyways, the IRAs are something that I like a lot, especially if you're of the age where you're near the ability to take distribution, because the IRAs allow you to do what's called an in-kind distribution, where you can fill it with gold and silver and then distribute it as a taxable event or liquidate it as a taxable event and actually take possession of the metal that is inside of the IRA. I do like them. I think that, if you're older, especially, it's a great way to make a big splash in the gold pool without writing out a big check. I'm concerned mildly that if things got really bad, see, in 2009, I sold my IRA. And while I'm I do think for people who have them, a metals IRA is a good place to be. But I sold it in 2009 after everything happened with the financial crisis, because there was a bill that made it all the way down to the House floor. And that bill was vetoed. It never really made it. But the crux of the bill was, at the time, there was a $17 trillion debt. And think about that. In 2009, it was 17 trillion. Now it's 30 trillion. I mean, do you see a problem in that? But anyways, the debt was 17 trillion, and the global, or the U.S. IRA total value was about 17 trillion. And there was a bill that made it down there that said, we want to, in times of turmoil and national emergency, we want to sequester people's IRAs and put it in what is, in essence, an annuity backed by U.S. Treasuries to stabilize interest rates in the dollar. Mm-hmm. The minute that happened, I sold an IRA. At the time was $600,000. I paid $250,000 in taxes and a $60,000 penalty as a 39-year-old guy with 3 kids. It was a difficult decision, but I've always trusted my gut. And I will tell people out there, now more than ever, you need to trust your gut and your intuition. We're in uncharted waters, and there isn't a financial advisor out there that will give you anything other than a guess, and probably one that is not objective, probably a subjective guess. And I would simply tell you that trust your gut, follow your intuition, do what you believe is right. I sold mine because I thought the likelihood of that happening was too great. Now, it was wrong. It may not have been the best decision. I don't care. I live by that. And I think most of us don't take accountability, and we defer what might be the most important thing to financial advisor, many of which, not all, learn more and more about less and less till they know everything about nothing, and think the road to retirement is only paved with mutual funds and stock certificates. So I think you take accountability. But for people that have IRAs and want to transfer them, the company that I use with the greatest success is New Direction Trust Company in Louisville, Colorado. Their website is NDTCO, as in New Direction Trust Co., NDTCO.com. And you roll over your IRA tax-free. It's called a precious metals IRA, but you can buy common stock or whatever you want. They're just one of the handful of custodians that allow physical metals. And then you fund it with whatever you want. It's got to be at least 3.9 fine. The only exception to that rule is the American Eagle Gold, which is not 24 karat. Gold has to be 24 karat. The American Eagle is not. It's 22 karat. Does have an ounce of pure gold in it, 24 karat, but 1/10 of an ounce of silver alloy sprinkled on it, which decreases the purity. But in silver and gold, the one condition is 3.9 fine pure silver, 24 karat gold. You have it held by a custodian or depository, and then you can either sell it if you want and redeploy it into other assets, sell it and take a cash distribution, or my favorite option is to take an in-kind distribution. So you can distribute the gold and silver, the specific items that you purchased, and have them sent to you. It's a taxable event, but it is, I think, a really nice way to get possession of it quickly when you need it and start distributing it right away, especially if you're in the age group where you're able to start or are already taking distributions.
Yeah, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Is that the saying? Or more than 2 in the bush, something like that?
Well, a bird in the hand in this case is worth a distribution in the bush, whatever it is that you're pulling out. And I think it's a big deal. The ability to pull that metal out, even if you aren't intending to do it, the ability to do it is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. I'm excited for you to come to Oklahoma City. I really am thankful for you being a part of our event, and just having this legacy, just to honor my dad and my daughter, and honor Bix and Amy and all that they've done to support us over the years. I just really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of it.
I will look forward to having a beer with you all. I'd love to come back on your show, Lisa, whenever you'll have me.
Thank you.
Happy to answer everyone's questions.
And we're all going to run down to my bank and check out the ITM machines and see the coin slot and the coin dispenser on them, on the new ATM
Right on.
machine.
Well, I'll be there enthusiastically following. real quick to Jim Montgomery's question, yes, it is 10.25 over spot right now on Silver Eagles. If you are trading them, if you're just selling them outright, maybe $10. I'll make something if you didn't buy them from me, but that just goes to show the premium is high both ways, buy and sell. And so in any case, yeah, no, I enjoy this. I love doing the Q&As. I'm happy to come on whenever you'll have me. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone's nice comments out there. It's these are interesting times, and I'm doing all I can to try to bring as much information to the public as possible. And I'm always waiting for someone to show me how they can poke holes in what I'm saying about Saudi Arabia, what I'm saying about the BRICS nations, and the chaos and the carnage that can ultimately ensue after. So I like the discourse, and hey, let's keep it up. Keep talking.
I will say one more thing. So when it goes, how quickly do you think it will go? I know you said a second ago hours. Do you mean literally hours, like within a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week?
You know, I know that some people, I have some friends who are traders that don't so much agree with that. I disagree with their take. I think that if OPEC and Saudi Arabia announce decoupling from the dollar as the solo settlement currency, that it'll happen immediately, because if you remember the scene in Trading Places where one of the Duke brothers was saying to the other, sell, Mortimer, sell, because everything was cascading down. And that's what I think would happen if all of these countries on the planet no longer need to hold dollars to buy oil. They will dump them, and it will be a hot potato. And as those dollars rapidly dump, they'll hit the shore quickly. And I think it would happen in a very, very quick manner. I think markets would open up, limit down. You would see bail-ins in banks that go bust. You'd see gating in money markets. You would see suspension of trading on all of the exchanges, because they would just be cascading down as interest rates spike. I think it will be something that where people, by design, I think they don't want people room to maneuver. It will catch everyone, I think, completely off guard. And I say that in part, part of the reason I say that, Lisa, is that all of these things, like gold be reclassified tier 1, like the Bank of International Settlements asking for a new Bretton Woods, like all of these alliances that are being made, sidestepping the dollar, like the largest infrastructure project in human history, connecting 75% of human population, like Saudi Arabia saying we're going to join BRICS, like Russia and China saying we've just issued a new BRICS world reserve currency, like India saying all of our trades, and the U.S. is the biggest trading partner, are now in rupee. All of these things, which all point to the same end, are not being told to us. You have to dig to find it. You don't hear it even on Fox, none of it. And so we are all going to be caught off guard. No one is aware that all of these countries, 90% of the world, is coalescing and unifying against the dollar hegemony. And I think that is why I believe there will be no time to react. People are very ill prepared. Almost 70% of this country is living paycheck to paycheck. At least that number can't write out a check for $500 to pay for a root canal or a blown out tire. We are not prepared. We are a country massively in debt, massively expanded, virtually nothing in the way of savings. And as inflation keeps going, we're near the lowest savings rate in history in this country. So, yeah, I think it will happen and catch everyone by surprise. It'll happen on a Monday morning in Europe or in Saudi Arabia or on a stage in China with all of the members of the BRICS nations with their arms around each other. And that'll be middle of the night, Sunday night here. We'll wake up to a whole new reality. And I think that'll be by design. I think you could argue that these things are happening right now slowly.
Slowly and then suddenly.
Yes, and I think, what was it, Hemingway, I think, who said, how did you go broke? Slowly and then all at once. Little by little, then all at once. And that's what's happening. The little by little is happening right now. No one's noticing it. But when they flip the switch, it's all at once.
That is why you guys need to go to Franklin and get your silver in your own possession talk to Andy, tell him Lisa sent you.
If you do that, and if you have your listeners send an email, our new website will be done this month.
Mm-hmm.
If your listeners send an email to info@milesfranklin, say Lisa sent me, we'll answer any questions, or myself. We will send a updated inventory, which I think your listeners will see prices will be as good as anywhere in the country, better than almost all the online companies in every respect. And we'll make sure that your listeners, especially since this is my first time on your show, get the best price in the country, personalized service. Give us a chance to earn your business. We'll make it worth your while. That I can promise you. And info@milesfranklin. Till the new site is done. Lisa sent me. Send you an updated inventory and do our damnedest to earn your trust in your business.
I love it. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to meeting you soon. You guys get to Oklahoma City. The link in the description for the tickets. Get to Fix's event Friday night, and get to our event at Team Mighty Saturday night. We're going to have a great weekend. And thanks again, Andy. I appreciate it.
I look forward to it.
Soon.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Have a